Hey everyone, Dan here. Before we get into it, if you enjoy these videos, please hit the like and subscribe button. And keep in mind that these are my own thoughts, opinions, and ideas. These are not meant to be, nor should you take them as, investment or trading advice in any way, shape, or form. Do your own due diligence, put in the work for yourself, and make your decisions based on that. Enjoy. All right, folks, here we are on Friday, March 29th. We're going to take a look at Rumble today. So I had a few messages asking me to follow up on my last Rumble video, sort of get a 2 cents reaction to the earnings and look at the chart. So, I pulled up the articles on the earnings and stuff, and without digging immensely deep into it, folks kind of wondering why it moved relatively sideways, maybe seemed a little bit lackluster of a reaction versus what they were hoping for. A few things. One, it looks like it was just top line, like pretty mixed earnings report. So yeah, they beat on their EPS estimate, but sales missed. And so that's one mixed bag. The other mixed bag that then sort of brings up, I suspect, is Rumble CEO path toward break even in 2025 is well underway. So here's the challenge. They're looking at break even, and that could be considered some good guidance, right? But with this most recent earnings, they also missed on earnings. And so there could be sort of a, we'll wait and see sentiment around this idea that there is potentially positive guidance coming up just next year, and trying to sort of like coordinate that with the reality of the most recent earnings here showing that they missed on revenue, right? So you're missing on revenue, but saying that you're going to break even next year, or that you're on the path to break even next year. So kind of trying to make sense of those two things, which could create, divergent paths down the line. So, I'm sure there's much more to it and whatnot. I'm mostly just looking at what's sort of readily available. And like I said, this isn't a super deep dive, but that's sort of my 2 cents. Now you mix that with also the reality that pretty recently, just at the beginning of the year, it was down here in the $3 range and spent a lot of time around the $5 range. Now heading into earnings, right, it was pushing up to 9, well into the 8s. And so additionally, folks may feel that if they're going to double, almost triple the price heading into earnings, that they don't want to see a miss on those earnings. And again, even if the guidance seems positive, it maybe feels a little bit flimsy in the sense of, we feel that we're on the track to break even 2025. That might feel just a little bit lacking in details, given the run up from 333 up to, I don't know what the actual high here was, but up over $9 heading into earnings. So again, the run up maybe didn't have a lot of appetite for any miss on the earnings, and then maybe some sort of questioning of that guidance. I don't know. I'm trying to read the minds of the entire market, but this is my video, so this is just my 2 cents as to what might be happening. And again, I'm sure there's greater detail to go into in all of that stuff, but this is just a cursory look. Now, chart holding up really well, because you just see like a relatively sideways move here, right? A little dip heading into the earnings after that big run up. So it did pull back a little bit, factored that in, and then maybe that's why it sort of came up and kind of settled into that range where it had already jumped up with the sort of lengthier run into earnings from the beginning of the year. Now the nearest in levels that I have, 790 to the downside. So can it continue to find and build support off of 790? And if so, can it break through 852? It looks like yesterday it sort of struggled with that high of 855. So wicked off of that level yesterday. And so that's going to be, the important one if it is going to be able to come up and press that $9 level again and maybe swing higher than that 920. We'll see. This could be like it'd be, relatively small and condensed, but could be cup and handle-ish. We'll see how that sort of plays out. But, it is continuing to do a good job of putting in higher lows for the time being as well. So that's another thing to sort of keep in mind is, does it put in essentially a flat top setup or an ascending triangle where it sort of, has encountered the sellers at this level previously, and it's going to continue to put pressure on them by putting in a series of higher lows and eventually maybe be able to break through that area. Now, if it does that and it continues to the upside, 9.55 and 10.15 are as high as I go for the time being. We can come take a broader look at that if we get past those levels. If something happens and it does have a stronger pullback and it loses that 790 support, 692, 625, and 525. Now in the think or swim side of things, we had trigger fire and nothing happened, and then a re-trigger and a refire, and also again sort of nothing happened. Certainly not like the big outsized reaction that you look for from a more meaningful trigger fire. You see back here, triggered and fired, and again, a whole lot of nothing, trigger and fire, and then finally you got that dip down to 333. So it may just be throwing a lot of signal, right? There's a lot of, I guess, noise over signal on the TTM squeeze indicator, at least for RUM at this juncture in its life. Still holding mid to upper range of the channel, so showing some strength there, but it's trying to build this green wave cloud again as it had sort of died off here and put it in what could have been a pretty precarious situation. I think if this had a few higher pushes, you might have seen it fall and dip when it came down here, but I think because maybe it hadn't done so, obviously it had more bullish momentum to exhaust, and you see that sort of playing out at the moment. Relatively even on the volume as of late, 54 to the sell side, 45 to the buy side, and you see here, sort of reflective in the formation of the candle itself. So we'll see how that continues to play out, but certainly if it loses support in the mid-range of the channel, which has been able to hold really well recently, that could be a telling sign of at least a micro move to come. But it may just have some additional time to consolidate here because, like I said, if that's just sort of a further playing out or expression of the sentiment around the earnings report, and it is sort of trying to consolidate anyway in a sort of natural chart progression from this recent push from the 3s up to the 9s, those two things could sort of come together to form an overall relatively sideways move, barring any big catalyst or huge macro event that shifts the market dramatically. All right, folks, I hope that you enjoy your long weekend, and as always, I appreciate you watching, and I will see you in the next video.